Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday, if it's Thursday or Friday, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Kyler Cheatham from The Confluential, and this is The Confluential Live. Thank you so much to our return viewers. If you're coming back to join us, we go live every Thursday at 9 a.m.-ish when the streaming system works. But we're a little late to the game today, but don't worry, we'll make up for it in really great content. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm so excited to have you. We're so excited to welcome you. So the mission of this conversation is to bring transparency and just a diversity around ideas for technology readiness, selection, and implementation. We know there are many different ways to be successful in these types of things. As much as vendors or big SIs want you to follow a cookie cutter project, that's not often what's best for your business. So the goal here is just to kind of talk through and have an informal conversation with you, the audience, around what does actual readiness in technology selection and then moving to implementation look like. So in the last few weeks, we've unveiled our River AI tool, which is a selection shortlist tool. You can scan it up here in the corner of where you're getting this today and try and check your shortlist, get your shortlist. You get your shortlist in under 60 seconds. What we've done is just taken years of technology implementation and selection data, built a database, and given you this opportunity to have access to a quick and easily accessible shortlist. So because we've talked a lot about selection, we want to talk about how to kind of finish up your selection readiness and move into the implementation process. Because a lot of times, which we're even seeing with our clients right now, you can select a perfect software, quote unquote perfect, right? The software that best fits your needs, and then have some issues with the next steps of going to implementation, whether that be partner issues, like your SI is dragging their feet, whether it's readiness issues within the organization. You thought the organization was more ready than it is. So today we're going to kind of dig into how do you move from selection to implementation. With that, just some quick logistics before I let Adam introduce himself. We can see your comments wherever you're joining us from today. The best part about this discussion is actually your insight, bringing your insight and thoughts to the table, giving you an opportunity to ask questions in real time in the chat. Even if you're joining after the fact, say you're watching this recording on LinkedIn or YouTube, you're able to drop comments in and our team will go in and answer them after the fact just to make sure that you get all of the information that you need. So with that, welcome, Adam. Happy Thursday. If you could, audience, drop in where you're joining from today just to test the chat feature and to see what kind of audience we have today. That would be great. And Adam, say good morning to the Confluential Live Show.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Adam Cheatham. I'm the CEO of Confluential. I'm very excited about this topic today, largely because, over the last couple of weeks with River AI and the deployment of that tool and making it available to you guys in the marketplace, our message has been don't waste your money on expensive consultants. When you can get an answer that's valuable to you for free, right? You can get a short list that's well thought out based on just what type of business you are, how big you are, what type of international footprint you have, those types of things. And that's information that should be available to you. And we believe in that. We believe in that type of transparency and accessibility of information. What we want to talk about today is what should you spend your money on instead? We talk a lot about expensive consultants. Selecting software for you is a waste of money. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't do your due diligence in picking the right software, picking a good software, and then planning for the use of it effectively. And that's what we'll talk about today, because at the end of the day, the software selection thought process that dominated the market in the early 2000s, 2010s is, that stuff's 90s material, right? There's so much more that you can do with the internet and with AI and things like that. That we thought River AI was an appropriate thing to bring to the marketplace. So let's talk a little bit today about what you do with that tool, what you do after you have a short list, and where do we get started. And that's really what we're excited to talk about today.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's dig into that a little bit. So you have your short list, you go through demos, you're moving to looking at a selection and going through all the different
Mhm.
pieces that happens with that. A lot of people think, okay, I just picked this software and we're good to go. But that is absolutely not the reality. So tell us a little bit about things that you need to do to make sure you're doing your due diligence in that process.
Yeah. So, and I'll give you a great example of the difference in how you ought to be thinking about it. Organizations that are going to run a software selection for you say that we're going to write requirements. We're write requirements to help you select a software system, and then we're going to use those requirements for the implementation as well. We're going to build on those. I've tried to do that. That's patently false. It's not possible to do that because you're not writing requirements for an implementation. You're writing them for a selection, which is fine if that's the way you want to go after it. But the way that we would like to set our clients up and the way that we help people with this process is to say, let's not write requirements for selection. Let's use the ones that we write to help validate software, of course, but let's write requirements for the implementation. Let's write requirements for readiness. This is where we start talking about the process side of the work and what it is going to be different. At the end of the day, I've done a little bit of posting on this recently about phase two and
Mhm,
why sometimes that doesn't happen.
mhm,
What we're trying to accomplish here by implementing a new ERP is gains in effectiveness and efficiency, greater accessibility of data, all those types of things that are positive gains for a new ERP system. And we want those gains to be tied to actual process change, actual process improvement. And so in our readiness stage, we write our requirements for process improvements, right? What is
mhm,
our future state? Not our future state for software selection, our future state for processes. And then the
mhm,
selection feeds into that. So we can prepare our processes, we can identify where it's going to be different, we can identify what gap software brings to the table, whichever one we choose to purchase, and we can figure out how to accommodate those gaps based on what it is we want to do with our software. And that's really where implementation readiness should start. You
mhm,
write your requirements for what your future will be, and then you feed your selection activities into that as a
mhm,
smaller substream of an implementation readiness activity. And
mhm,
that yields a whole lot more positive results, and it makes the requirements and process work you do actually useful in an implementation. You hand that type of work over a system integrator, and they'll be glad to have it. You hand selection requirements to a system integrator, and they throw them out the window to start over
Why? Why do they do that?
because they're not written that way for implementation. They're
Yeah,
written for selection. How
yeah,
do I select a software system that does these things? And so they got to figure out where it is you fit into their software, so they start thinking about how do I write it for my software. If you write it for your future state, your
mhm,
process architecting is already done, and then
mhm.
that way you can build your system into that as opposed to building your processes into your system.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to the audience. Great questions coming in. Let's look at this one from Joe here. How do you navigate all the options? It's confusing to know the right fit, especially with AI. I really like this question because it includes all of the different options that we now see. Adam mentioned kind of the selection methodology that was in the early 2000s, or even I would say, 5, 10 years ago, is really out of date because of all of the different options in the marketplace, whether
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at a core ERP system, whether you're looking at an ERP system that integrates with an MES system, whether you're
Mm-hmm.
looking at AI for your enterprise level or for business unit level. There's all kinds of things to consider. And if you don't do this every day,
Yeah.
it's super confusing. And of course, we launched River AI to kind of help with this so that you can give the requirements and give that short list. But there's still a lot more involved in it, which is why we offer kind of that consultation call just to show you, like, yeah, this system is a great system. But here's other things to consider that you might not have known, and you might not have considered as a part of your overall requirements. So how do you navigate through the like just this wave of options, especially with the very aggressive marketing language that often isn't true for core vendors?
Yeah, you use your strategic objectives as your guide, right? At Confluential, we talk about strategy, people, process, and technology, and how they are integrated into your enterprise architecture, right? Enterprise architecture is kind of something that traditionally people think is how are my systems connected. It's actually, in my opinion, how your business is built
Mm-hmm.
through processes, people, technology, and strategy. So navigating all the options, especially when you start thinking about AI, especially when you start thinking about Joe's other question, what part of your business would actually benefit from AI first in advance of ERP? These are things that you should start setting as far
Mm-hmm.
as what do I want to do? What am I going to gain? You start with what are my strategic goals and objectives, right? This is going to set out the pathway that we want to travel down. How am I going to know I'm accomplishing positive things? They're going to align with my strategic objectives. Then I'm going to start looking at the processes that feed into those strategic areas, right? If I want to start thinking about reducing costs, I would probably look at supply chain, labor, production, those types of things. If I want to talk about speeding up my delivery or being able to tap into different parts of the market, I'll look at more of my fulfillment flow, maybe my CRM side of things. And when you think about it that way and you break it into those processes, you start to figure out what do I actually need. You don't have to assume that ERP is the answer. River AI will give you a great ERP shortlist,
Mm-hmm.
but what you're responsible for is figuring out what you actually should buy. And if it's ERP, great. If it's not, that's fine too. This is how you know what would be beneficial from AI first. If I have one set of goals, and this is really my key pain point, don't try to implement a whole ERP system just to solve for a small problem. That's trying to drive a finishing nail into a wall with a
Mm-hmm.
sledgehammer. You're going to make a bigger hole than you want,
Mm-hmm.
and you create a lot of risk in it. So when you think about implementing ERP, it should be something where your organization needs a holistic approach
Yeah.
to accomplishing your strategic goals. They're high enough level to need that. Then you can figure out where AI can help you design your processes. There's a lot of work you can do in that. How does AI help you identify the areas where your people are going to struggle the most, the biggest, most significant areas of change, and what types of technology you can plug into those so that you can have that feed into your strategic goals and objectives. That's how you do that with
Mm-hmm.
AI, and how you navigate all those options. You start with what do I need,
Yeah.
and don't just assume that buying something will solve the problem.
Yeah, we've seen that be prolific here in our industry, especially in early 2025 of AI is my strategy and we're implementing AI just to say that we use AI. And I actually did a video on this yesterday that was really fun to do. You can find it on my LinkedIn channel or YouTube and TikTok, but it breaks down how smart manufacturing was implemented with John Deere because they looked at their robotic welding process and really focused on what was the pain point that they were trying to solve. So AI is not just an innovation, it's not a science experiment, right? It's an ability to be a business strategy, but that takes strong leadership to say, we're not going to get all crazy in the hype. We're going to sit here and we're going to see what pain points do we need and how can AI solve that? And then go into what system is going to help with our needs and our requirements. And that's where you really have to call someone to make sure, because we've also seen this rise of these really quote unquote cheap AI vendors that give you this solution, drop it, implement it, and then totally ghost you. And it's not an established solution, right? So that's why when we go in and do AI, we don't recommend partners that we've never seen implement in an effective environment before
Mhm.
because it's just too new and our clients are too good to be science experiments, right? We can't risk that. That's too much of a risk to their business. We need
Yeah.
to work with our established partners that we know is going to support this new technology and processes. So great questions. Thank you so much. Let's go to the one from Ben here. Hi, Ben. Thank you for joining us. For those of you listening on our audio version, the question is, What have you seen from the customers you work with in terms of budget allocation for not only the initial AI rollout, but for long-term optimization and adoption? This is a really, really important, good question. Lots of layers here. So, Adam, I'll let you take it first.
Yeah. So what we're seeing is that, and what we're advising our customers on is that it's not just an implementation. It's AI, ERP, whatever the technology is. If you're getting something new, you're gonna have to support it afterwards. It's not gonna support itself, right? There are all types of different technology packages that you have to learn. You have to learn how to use, and AI is something that you also have to learn how to teach.
Mm-hmm.
It's like hiring a new employee and being like, "All right, good luck, day one, go after it, go do your job." And they're like, "Do we have like a
Yeah.
handbook or like an
What's
onboarding process?
yeah.
How do I get into my email?"
Yeah.
Right. Let's start with that. You know, what we are working with our clients on in these types of spaces is really that let's build it, let's support it, and let's maintain it so that we can grow it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really what becomes a big difference maker. And I think that this is something that a lot of organizations are learning the hard way right now.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
I would encourage every single one of you to Google something right now. Company fired employees to replace them with AI. And every single one of your results that you're going to find is going to talk about how they regret it. There are companies that have fired thousands that are saying, I can replace all of these people with AI. And what is happening? They jump too far into it too fast, and now they don't know how to run their business. They have AI doing things, they have no idea what's going on, and they don't have anybody to teach it, so it's doing its own thing. And there's a lot of things that AI will try to do on its own that isn't gonna necessarily be in the best interest of your business because it requires a context that needs to be taught. And maybe we'll get there one day, maybe smaller companies will get there faster, but when we're talking about companies that are firing hundreds to replace them with AI, this is such a crazy development, about this. After firing 700 employees for AI, Swedish company admits it was a bad idea. Uh, Companies are investing in AI, but are regretting it. Another survey found that 55% of UK businesses, and this is futurism.com,
Mm-hmm.
who rushed to replace jobs with AI now regret their decision, right? When you think about what you need to do to implement AI, think of it as a tool, not as a replacement. It
Mm-hmm.
cannot replace your people. It may make them more effective so that you can go in and you can be able to do more things with fewer people, just like ERP, right? It's always nails on a chalkboard to me when somebody says, I'm going to implement a new ERP so I can replace people.
Mm-hmm.
Not, I promise you, that is not going to happen. If you're going to go in thinking about replacing people, you're going to have a hard time. Same with AI. So I love that question from Ben. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and I will just add to that. I think that that's so critical. Another piece that I've seen when it comes to budget allocation is kind of we're done with the exploratory AI budget. Like we're done going to the board and being like, hey, we need X
Mhm.
amount to look at AI and see what it can do in the area. Boards and C suites are becoming more savvy around, especially in the spending area of AI, and looking at what could they potentially be saving or what should they be looking for as outputs when it comes to an AI rollout. That's why our methodology, that speed to value methodology that we implement AI, it actually goes business unit by business unit. So that way you're scaling those learnings. And then also you're taking any sort of excess revenue or savings and you're actually using that to invest in the next implementation area so that you're using less budget as opposed to asking for more because you didn't do it right at the enterprise level the first time. Enterprise level AI is still something that we don't see regularly. And if it is enterprise level AI, it's typically built and customized by the actual client, not by a vendor. They might be using it in partnership with the vendor's technology, which we always recommend, right? Vendors are great in this type of exploratory area to help you kind of figure out what they do, especially in our sweet spot, which is complex manufacturing. The vendors in that area are incredibly helpful when it comes to
Mhm.
AI and automation and smart manufacturing initiatives. But gone are the days of the exploratory budget where we're just, saying we're doing AI to do AI. But this is a great question, Ben. Thank you so much for this. So I did drop our case studies around AI and replacing the human side. There's been a few of them. When I comment on these, they only show up on YouTube. So go over to our YouTube channel at The Confluential or at Bite Size for our podcast, and you can see all of that information
When
there.
I like Joe's question in context with this too, and I wonder what you think about the tension between the business and tech teams when it comes to AI funding priorities.
Yeah, I'm gonna start timing when Adam like hijacks the moderation. He gets weird at the 45-minute mark. So just, hold on for about 10 minutes until we start with the Star Wars analogy. And then he's gonna take over the moderation. I do love this question in all seriousness because this is really critical. I actually had someone ask me the other day, do you work with the business team or do you work with the tech team? And I'm like, oh, it really depends on the project and it depends on what the goals are. But for those of you joining in our audio version, Joe's question is, do you see tension between business and tech teams when it comes to AI funding priorities? And the
Mhm.
short answer is absolutely. So Adam, you take it, and then I'll add some color around it.
Yeah, so this gets back to the same old problem. I was actually talking to a CIO of one of our clients recently, and talking about the IT project, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the business doesn't want. That's where this comes from. IT wants to buy sweet, cool new toys, and the business wants nothing to do with it. And now, don't you bring your experiments my way. When I could do all of these great things for you, right? But that's not how our business works. That doesn't add value to us. So what usually happens when you start talking about AI funding priorities is what the business wants to spend money on, IT doesn't think is flashy enough because the business wants to take it slow because they see all of these terrible stories about what happened when somebody tried to do this. And IT says, well, let's just build some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The business will like it. And then the business says, no, I
No.
don't. I don't like it at all because the message, the strategy, the objectives aren't cohesive. And that's what needs to happen when we start talking about AI, right? AI should be funded jointly, of course, from a priorities perspective. Maybe not funded jointly because it's got to come out of somebody's budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but attacked and
Mm-hmm.
approached jointly in the business saying, I have the following areas that I would like to experience gains. And then
Mm-hmm.
IT should approach and say, here's how I can solve that problem. Here is the best way to solve that problem.
Mm-hmm.
And IT needs to be a little bit cooler just a little bit sometimes in saying
Mm-hmm.
skipping to the coolest, sweetest, slickest new thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
you could buy humanoids to run
Mm-hmm.
your shop floor. Is that going to work? Probably not. At least not initially. Maybe it'll
Yeah.
work in 10 years. Maybe it'll work in 5. Who knows with the speed of change. But it's not going to work today. It's the coolest way of doing it, that's for sure. But cool doesn't always make money, especially
Mm-hmm.
when you're in more of an industrial manufacturing environment. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where I see most of these challenges coming from. It has less to do with the funding priority and more to do with alignment between what the business wants and what
Mm-hmm.
IT wants to provide.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say when we think about AI funding priorities for the business versus tech, I've actually seen quite the opposite. The business wants AI opportunities and tech and the IT team says, well and good, but we don't have any sort of data to support this crazy I like IT that you want. You want humanoids, cool, that's fine. You could absolutely buy them, but we don't have the data hygiene, the discipline, the behavior. Our data is an absolute disaster, and we don't have, the code to be able to showcase how to use those things. So usually we've seen the opposite of IT really pushing the business to get more technology, to get more of these efficiency pieces. And then we see the IT team really moving the business towards newer technology. And this is kind of the opposite. The business thinks that AI is this weird silver bullet magic wand and can solve all of their process inefficiencies, their technology workarounds, all of these different things. And in reality, that's not true. It will absolutely amplify that. Or if we're talking about budget, you'll spend a ton of money on a system that you can't use, because even if you get the data cleansing and it all ready to go, well and good working, if you don't have the maintenance planning and structure in place to take care of that, the health
Yeah.
checks, all of these different pieces, then you don't have that ability to continue to optimize the technology, and it'll become obsolete. Those workarounds are like weeds in the garden. They're always going to pop back up if there's any area that is showcasing any openings for opportunities or any pain points that you didn't address.
Yeah.
So,
Well, let's be honest on this too. AI is still new, right? It's moving quickly, but there isn't an organization out there that's full scale AI all the way, except the ones that sell it, right? So OpenAI, fine, yeah, I'll buy that. But the Fortune 500 companies that are they're not using AI to run their businesses yet. Nobody's using AI to run any more than small project areas. Why? Because no Fortune 500 company is going to gamble billions of dollars on a solution that's unproven. It's just simply not rational. There are companies that are being built from the ground up, that are built on AI from the ground up, and some of them are thriving. What you're not hearing is that some of them are also failing terribly because they can't figure out how to do it. AI is still an area of growth. It's still an innovation. It's early on the adoption curve, and there's a lot that's going to come out in the next year and then the next 5, and it will compound. I promise you that. But it's still early enough that you should be expecting to take things bite size, and also think about what's a good idea versus what's a bad idea. So one of my favorite examples, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was sharing on a text thread, these companies that are using AI to write performance reviews. What? Like, so let's just think about this, right? How engaged is AI in this process is, of course, a part of the challenge, right? If it's I have feedback and I really want to provide it in a meaningful fashion, I can't find the words for it, AI is a great tool for that. But this isn't I have an employee who sinks at their job, and so I want you to write a message for me that tells them that. Here are the problems that I have seen, and then AI writes it up and you send it. That it lacks authenticity, and it lacks a human component that is required for that type of thing, right? Nobody wants to be given an AI generated performance review because AI didn't see him do any of it. It's just absolutely a shock to me. The other part of it that I think is important is that if you do that, don't be surprised when you get a response from your employee generated by AI as a reply to their performance review that you generated with AI. Now your employees aren't even talking to each other. The AIs are talking to each other for them. This is like lawyers talking to each other on behalf of a couple that's trying to figure out how to split their things up at the end of a divorce. And like, nobody wants that.
What are you trying to say?
No. I'm using, it's an analogy, right? So no real life experience with that inferred. But at the end of the day, you see it in all kinds of movies. We'll say.
No, I'm good.
It's a movie thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's actually, when do we have movies that come out? There was one of those. What was it, Meg, or something like that?
Oh, here we go. 40-minute mark. Here we are.
So anyway, you should be responsible for the authenticity of your organization. We'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And you shouldn't hand the keys of that over to AI. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
way off track here. I've got a million now random thoughts in my head because
Well,
I don't know.
here,
You
let's
guys
bring it back
kind
in and let's go to this question because I think this question from Joe is super important. It's not the most fun, but I'm super interested in your thoughts on this. And I'm going to frame it just a little bit differently. His question is great, but his question is, I've seen contracting really hold up the selection phase. How can you effectively execute contract, especially when moving to the cloud? And I'll just add, since we're
yeah.
talking about AI, can you use AI to pull out any sort of like sneaky contract language when going through these pieces with the vendor, or should you still be having an expert read this because it's like no contract you've ever seen?
So there's a lot wrapped up in that. So from a perspective of contracting hold up the selection phase, it's for me, it should take as long as it needs to get a good contract in place, right? Take your time with that. Don't set it and forget it. AI is not your answer to getting a good solid contract. AI cannot make legal decisions for you. Let's put it that way, right? So you should do that. Hire somebody to read it for you. Yeah, you can put contracts into AI and say, show me all the legal potholes and all that stuff, and it will do a fine job. That's fine. But you miss out on an important piece of context, which is, what am I responsible for?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You need to do that. You need to know what you're responsible for. And there's also a lot that AI hasn't been able to experience in the process of an implementation, which are, these terms are going to be problematic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually reading through contracts right now
Mm-hmm.
for a client, and I of course always tell, I am not an attorney. I
Yeah.
don't
Oh,
want
yeah.
to be an attorney. I considered it at one point in time and decided that that was not the life for me. I am a consultant, so I will provide you a consultant's review of a document based on my opinion and what it is I have seen in things like implementations and expert witness cases. And you can use that experience. No AI has that experience, right? And you can use that to provide context. So when we're thinking about effectively executing contracts, it should again go back to how you align with what it is you're looking at, right? Let's buy the right things. Let's buy the right amount of right things and those types of things. So contracting should really be something that you sit down and you read. Use AI as a tool. That's fine. Get through the contracting phase, prepare your organization with a good core team. I know that we're way off topic on readiness.
We always are.
um,
But it's
but
about what you guys want to talk about. It's not about what we want to talk about, right?
yeah.
That's the important part. So,
So at the end of the day, you should be thinking about readiness
mhm.
when you're really thinking about selecting a software package, right? How do I prepare my organization for this? I still have all these random things in my head about AI gone wild, but we'll do that. Maybe we'll do just a live stream on AI gone wild at one
Yeah,
point.
we'll save it for like a Friday. That would actually be really fun. So
Yeah,
we
there
should
you
do
go.
that where we go
Um,
through that. But yeah,
yeah,
so just to kind of tighten up this question, because I do think it's important. I think the importance of this question is just the awareness around these contracts are important. So when you select a vendor, you're still going to need to go through all of the contracting to ensure that all of the licenses make sense, all of the, you're holding them accountable for the implementation that you need to effectively go with. And then you have the SIs in the mix, which SIs can hold up implementations a lot. So it really depends on when their teams are available. And there's a lot that goes into this phase. So having someone kind of like our clients have Adam and team that's keeping everything moving in the same phase,
yeah,
because a lot of people think, okay, I selected it, I'm ready. Let's go. And you might be ready. You might be totally ready, but the other people around you, you're only a third or a fourth of the conversation now, right? We have to get
Yeah.
everybody else moving to make sure that the technical implementation team is ready, that the actual vendor team is ready, that anyone else that's a third party application is ready. And so there's a
Mhm.
lot going into this. It's like going out and playing, with a basketball team where you have one player that's ready to go and the rest are on the bench sick with a cold, right? That team is not going to perform at optimal level because
Yeah.
they're not all ready to go.
Well, and here's how I think about it. If contracting is holding up your readiness program, let it, right? That means that you're taking the right amount of time to it. Face yourself with a scenario. You are sitting across the courtroom from your system integrator and software provider, and you're saying this term in this contract is wrong. And how do I know? Because my AI told me. You want to know what the judge is going to do? He's going to laugh at you. You are going to have a problem with that. And well, I have my AI read my contract for you. That does you zero
Good
good
point.
when it
Yeah,
comes
good
to the
point.
fact that your AI is not going to can't sign a contract for you. So think about it that way. And to be fair and honest, I think that the bigger part of the conversation should still be the readiness side, right?
Mhm.
Take your time reviewing contracts. It
Mhm.
takes a lot of work to get a team ready to implement an ERP. You
Absolutely.
have to know who's on your core team. You have to know that you got coverage. You got to know how much time are they going to spend on this. And if you're not thinking that you're going to have full-time dedicated people to your core team, at least at times, then you need to start thinking about your timeline too, right? If you, it, I like the idea for most organizations, a core team 4, 5, 6, unless you're a larger organization that has more complexity. But 4 to 6 is a good number of folks who could be possibly full time on your project at times. And if you're only going to tell me I can only have them for 20 hours a week sometimes, then we need to stretch out our timeline. We need to plan
Yeah.
for that too, right?
Mhm.
So you have to get your core team in place. You got to get your timeline in place, and it has to reflect your core team's availability in that so that it's realistic. Otherwise, it's just a guess. As you continue down that path, the next step is to start thinking about a RACI diagram. Who's responsible,
Mhm.
accountable, consulted, and informed on which activities that are going to be conducted through this process, right? What is your SI going to do for you? What are they not going to do for you? What are you accountable for and responsible for as a client? And what are you capable of doing? Where are those areas where you need to shore up because you are responsible for something that you don't have a capacity for? And where do you need to add to it? Those are some key components of the challenge. And in implementing, we go back to the requirements conversation. What am I not going to get from this software package, and how I'm going to solve that problem? And then do I need another third party partner to help me with that problem? Where do they fit into the whole integrated project plan? This is where this is where we kind of we're going to start the conversation. Maybe we'll still do a big one
Yeah.
on that
Yeah.
sometime soon. But overall, implementation readiness and being ready to start your program is where you should be thinking.
Mhm.
And you can pick software as a part of that because you're selecting your new processes, you're selecting people to implement your new processes, and you're selecting the technology that will fit that, whether it's ERP or AI or something else, CRM, MES, whatever you like, whatever you need. Actually, it's probably a better way of thinking about it. Get all those pieces of readiness in place, and
Mhm.
then have your contracts ready at the same time as your team is ready. And those are a lot. There's a lot of work in that. Both of those things.
Oh yeah,
So,
a ton of work. And I
so,
think, yeah, I think that's the point of this conversation is you need to be able to consider that even though you've selected a software, that is only a small piece to
mhm.
the puzzle of getting to the next phase of implementation. And it's really helpful to have someone that's been through it before, understands this dynamic to say, okay, here is, the phase two or the next steps. And I do encourage you to go look at Adam's post around that because he's got a lot of great comments going on to kind of understand what that looks like. So we are
I want to throw one last thing in there. Don't
okay.
be afraid to back way up. You know, it would not be the first time on earth, and it wouldn't be even be the first or second time I've seen it happen, where you get to the contracting stage and something doesn't make sense, and you got to go back to the drawing board and say, from a functional perspective, this product fits, but from a perspective of being able to handle that contractually and being able to support that software, being able to implement it, being able to have a commercial relationship with somebody where I'm dedicated to that organization. You may look at that contract, you may go back and forth and then decide, you know what, this just isn't it. I promise you, it will cost you less money to pull the plug on it then than it will to pull the plug on it 3 years into a bad implementation that's gone way sideways, was a decision you never should have made in the first place, and now you're stuck with it. And you probably got 2 more years of licensing you're gonna have to pay for, and you don't get out of that.
Yeah.
So
Not at all.
yeah,
You
we're
truly
seeing.
do not get out of that. That's a very good point. I'm glad you put that in there. So, for sure. So, if you have additional questions, because as you can tell, this is a very complex subject. We covered a little bit of selection readiness, a lot of bit of AI, as we typically do, as it's definitely something that needs to be considered in your readiness. If you have more questions, you're welcome to drop them in the comments here. Our team will scroll them, bring them to us, and we'll answer them directly. You can also reach us both directly at Kyler@theconfluential.com or Adam@theconfluential.com. You can follow us. We have a variety of different thought leaderships, both of our personal LinkedIn pages. We also have the Confluential, and then our podcast Bite Size that we feature many of these conversations with other people on. And then, of course, Confluential Live is available on our YouTube channel. If you are curious about River AI and you haven't seen it in action, you can go over there and see a live demo, or again, just scan it here. It's very simple and easy to use. But we appreciate all of these amazing questions. Really, this is what makes the live so special, is all of your great insight and sharing these amazing questions. So we deeply appreciate you joining us today. We will see you next week. It is a short week here in the States because of our holiday on Monday, which is Memorial Day. But we will still be live on Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern time, or I'm sorry, 11 a.m. Eastern time in the States. So thank you to Adam. Thank you to the audience, and we will see you next week.